Okay, I'm sorry about that last recording. It didn't work out very well. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you. Tomorrow there's going to be Yellow Vest events going on in Calgary, Edmonton, and Red Deer. Now, what is the Yellow Vest movement? Yellow Vest movement, and I'm just going to read this briefly for you here. Uh, just going to look at a couple points up until then. So what do we have here? So images of Gillette Jeunesse in French, so named for the yellow vests they wear, have flooded news broadcasts in recent weeks. To trace the deep roots of their protests, one has to go back to the end of communism and the failure of central planning as an alternative to the market economy. Now, I guess this is the main point I wanted to address really, is that to me the Yellow Vest movement is it's a citizens initiative where they take to the streets and they expose that the socialist slash communist approach of government has failed. It has caused systemic problems in the country, whether it be in food supply, whether it be in social service supply, whether it be just in order within society, that things have become chaotic, disruptive, and non-functional. Could be that the market has been reeling because of bad management and bad government. So I think this is kind of why a lot of people in Canada have picked up this Yellow Vest movement and why there are these initiatives going on tomorrow at noon in various cities across Canada. Some other locations and times, I don't have them all, but in Canada, in Alberta in particular, tomorrow at noon, there will be an event at the Calgary City Hall, the Edmonton City Hall and the Red Deer City Hall. I believe there's also an event in Calgary as well. I'm not sure on the timing of that one. You can do a search. If you do hashtag Yellow Vest, you should find a lot of information about the Yellow Vest movement, and I imagine that those events are using that hashtag on their protest pages or announcements. In any event, there is also another hashtag that we've been using, and it's Yellow Vest Canada. So it's hashtag Yellow Vest Canada. You can do a search for that on Facebook, Twitter, other networks that are out there. You can search through the search engines and so on. Now we have put together a promotional video that is promoting the event in both Edmonton and Red Deer. You'll find that on our webpage for the Canadian Political Accountability Grassroots Movement. Now this movement, I'm just going to touch on this for a minute. This movement is it's a nationwide grassroots movement geared at getting citizens to make political accountability more than an election buzzword. It's enough. Enough is enough, guys. We have to stop doing this flip-flopping but between two centrist parties that are connected into globalism and think that if we just wait till the next election and we flip-flop over to the other party, that we're going to actually be saved from this disaster that we call globalism, which essentially is the dissolution, the dissolving of national sovereignty and national borders. It's time that we get to the place where we decide what happens in our country, we the people. Initially, the government of our nation was we the people. So it is by the people, for the people, of the people. These are the three concepts of democracy. So when you elect somebody to government, make no mistake that that person is supposed to be there representing Canadians. They're supposed to be representing our views. They're supposed to be representing our values. They're not supposed to be representing the views and values of foreign interests, whether they be capitalistic, whether they be Marxist, whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter about their political stripe. What matters is that Canada is supposed to be a sovereign nation. We're supposed to have the ability to have immigration policy that is our own. We're supposed to be able to have a reasonable way of life without high taxation. We should have accountability in government. We should be able to have a society that runs fairly well, even though it may be pluralistic and have people from different backgrounds coming here and coexisting. Now, in order for that to function well, we have to stop this nonsense that the government has been actively promoting. And that nonsense is to faction the people of Canada and have us working against each other so that we will not see that government has been failing us. Government has been taken over by people who are committed to subverting our national system and making us into a nation state region, a trading bloc within the newly formed New World Order. Now, this has been happening for many years. It's been happening in the United States and in Canada as well. It's been happening in other countries in other ways. But Canada is the country that we live in. Canada is the country that we believe in. And we have a national anthem that has been attacked and maligned. Why? Because it says that we actually believe in the sovereignty of God. We believe in the concept that our nation should be strong and free. A nation strong and free. Not a trading bloc within an international body that is governed by the UN or other, whatever it may be. So it could be a different name. Obviously over in Europe they have the EU. But ultimately what's behind it is individuals who want to run the entire world, and they've branded this globalism because it sounds palatable to people. It makes sense. We live on a globe, or at least many people believe we do. Don't tell the flat earthers, but anyways, just kidding. At the end of the day, it comes down to this. We live in a community that expands far beyond the borders of our nation. But that doesn't mean that we have to become one world order. It doesn't mean that there cannot be distinct nations, there cannot be distinct groups, distinct people. It doesn't mean that, folks. We are a nation that should be proud of our heritage, of where we've come, how we've built a society that isn't filled with terrorism every day. It isn't filled with people being tortured for speaking out against some kind of political system or religious system or whatever it may be. We should be happy, not only happy and say, oh, well, you should be happy you don't live in Afghanistan, or you should be happy you don't live in Jordan. Why are you complaining? I get tired of that argument. Aren't you tired of our country gradually becoming like it was behind the Iron Curtain, like it was in the days of the Dark Ages, like it was in the days when Islam ruled a great portion of the other side of the world, and many people lived in fear and in tyranny because of the fact that they were under a political religious system that is based on the concept that you must submit to the caliphate, to this regime that basically says you only have one means of belief that you are allowed to have. You are not allowed to have dissenting views, and if you are a Muslim and you convert to another religion, you can actually be, and people are every day around the world in Muslim states, killed merely for converting away from Islam. Now, if you live in Canada, or you live in Britain, or you live in France, and you are a Buddhist, you're a Hindu, you're a native spiritualist, you're a New Ager, you're a Christian, you're a Satanist, you're a witch, whatever you may be, okay, whatever your belief system is. Last time I checked, you don't get killed if you convert away from that belief system. You are free to make a decision on how you want to believe and how you want to live, as long as you live lawfully. As long as you're not out there, killing people and all this other stuff. Yet, we see in these nations that embrace Islam wholesale, and they embrace Sharia law, that what we end up with is a nation that does not embrace freedom, it does not embrace pluralism, it does not allow freedom of speech. In fact, you see the signs, and I speak to people through ministries and through connections overseas, that they report back that if you speak even a word that is misplaced against Muhammad, you risk every kind of abuse, and you can be imprisoned for an unnamed number of years before you even get trial. And then you may or may not receive justice, but most often you don't, because most often, with rare exception, you are killed because you dared speak against Muhammad. Now, this is obviously very backwards. This is obviously very extreme. And who wants that in our country? Yet, people in Canada on the left, and I'm not a real pusher of left-right stuff, but the fact is that when you have a group of people in a country who are recognizably in favor of things that are destructive to the country, it's okay to identify them, no matter how screamy, yelly, or social justice warrior people want to go on it. The reality is that when you allow this craziness to be promoted as normal, when you have people on the left who are promoting the acceptance of Sharia law in Canada. Look, Sharia law involves honor killings. Sharia law involves people having acid thrown on their face because they, let's say a woman wears makeup or she wears a skirt that's a little bit too high or whatever it may be. I believe in modesty, but I'm just saying you should not have acid thrown on your face because either you said the wrong thing to the wrong person or because of the fact that you actually are exercising a reasonable amount of liberty. This should never be something that we have to worry about in Canada. And yet, what are we facing? Since we have seen this migration happen into Canada at the behest of Justin Trudeau's invitation to the world, come on in, and subverting Canada's national immigration laws and disrespecting immigrants who immigrated to our country through normal ways. Now, what we've seen is an increase similar to what happened in Europe, though fortunately we're not there yet, but we've seen an increase in these kinds of terrorist activities, though they want to claim that they are because the person happened to be Arab, but they had a mental illness. Well, interestingly enough, prior to this subversion of our immigration system, prior to these migrants coming into our country in a fashion that they're not supposed to, which we used to call illegal, but now according to the UN, we're not allowed to use that word. Now we're seeing terrorist activity. Now we're seeing overburdening of our social systems and high costs to our cities. And no apology on the part of the Prime Minister. Rather, he's about to sign on to the UN Compact, which in effect will make it illegal to actually protest, to actually have a dissenting voice on policies that Canada will be required by this compact to adopt, which are not our own policies, which are top-down, forced upon us by an international, unelected body. And there's no accountability. We can't vote them out. We cannot do anything in any way, shape, or form because they're above our country level. They're outside of our system. It's designed this way so they have no accountability in the world. Now, do you want a body that has technically no accountability in the world to you, the average citizen, to be making the decisions about how your country is run, about who comes in and out of this country, and about the danger that your children are exposed to? And do you think it's fair that Justin Trudeau would make comments that are against construction workers in this country and make these statements that indicate that when an individual goes into an area of the country who is a construction worker, particularly male, that they put women at risk in that area on the mere fact that they are a man? Now, can you imagine the backlash, the outcry that would be said if the same statements were made about women construction workers. Well, you allow women construction workers to go into an area and you put people at serious risk. There are considerations, there are gender considerations that must be evaluated. This is madness. This prime minister that goes around, and he started out when he was first prime minister taking selfies every occasion that he could, after I think he received enough indication that people were tired of his selfies, then he simply looked for photo ops, for opportunities for other people to take pictures of him. Additionally, he goes on these lavish trips at the taxpayers' expense to terrorist islands and the like. Then he makes statements about giving our money, our hard-earned taxpayer dollars, away to please the likes of pop singers and to be cool. Now, this is not cool, and this is not okay. The way that he has disrespected Canadians, that he has disrespected our system of government that has been long since established since 1868, 1867, when Confederation was formed. We have a system of government which is supposed to be a democracy. Now, he had previously indicated that he has a strong appreciation for the communist state of China. Well, that would explain very much why he has been acting the way that he has, very arbitrary, and ramming through laws like M103 that basically make it illegal, although not in practice yet, but it lays down the foundation for anti-blasphemy laws that are in the Middle East. This is, they call it the anti-Islamophobia law, but effectively what it is making illegal is speaking against the practices of Islam, particularly the most aggressive and most dangerous ones, which are often found in Sharia law, but are also found in terrorist activity, and are also found in rank-and-file Muslims in various countries that engage in honor killings and the like. Now, you don't have to be an ISIS fighter to be doing an honor killing. You don't need to be an ISIS fighter to stone people from converting away from Islam to Christianity or any other faith. In fact, it is your obligation under Sharia law to ensure that the one who has become an infidel because they converted against Islam is taken care of. They're dealt with. Now, I have Muslims that I have spent time with, I have worked with, I have friendly relations with them as individuals, but that doesn't mean that I don't have issue with the way that countries that are run by Muslim states have these tortures that go on. They burn people alive. They cut off heads. There are undemocratic things that go on, the dictatorships. And the kinds of activities like the burning of churches, the burning of houses, beating up people because they dare to share their faith of a different religion. If this isn't made up, I get reports of these kinds of things on an ongoing basis. And frankly, all you have to do is go to the website, thereligionofpeace.com, and you will see the daily troubles that are being caused in the world by this faith called Islam. Now, I'm not speaking about every individual person. Obviously, people are different. They're different in each religion. But when the religion itself is a political system, it's not merely a belief that you can coexist with. It is a system that is geared at dominating and taking over the world by their own admission. They are calling, in different states, they're calling for the death of America, the death of the West. They're calling for a caliphate the world over under the regime of Sharia law. Now, you might get mad at me because you think that I'm being unkind or not generous towards individuals who happen to be Muslims. No, that's very far from the truth. It's nothing to do with the individuals. Sure, there are bad Muslims that engage in these practices that I would call reprehensible, that happen to be promoted and endorsed by Islam. There are also very many Muslims currently in Canada that peaceably coexist with the people around them and are not engaged in those kinds of things. However, I would say that they are aligning themselves more so to the Western culture than the Islamic faith that they are called to walk in. And in some areas of the world where those are Islamic states, those individuals would actually be called hypocrites within Islam because they're not following the true way of Muhammad. So, we have a problem where we have a prime minister who said the Muslim prayer that basically makes him a Muslim. According to Muslims, they would believe that if he said that prayer, that he would have earnestly said it and that he therefore is a Muslim. And we see that he courted Muslims in order to get into office. He went into Wahhabi mosques to court people for votes. Now, I certainly don't know that he's a Muslim because he dresses up and seems to act like whoever he wants to court. Like, for example, when he went over to the state of India and he dressed up as a Hindu man with a Hindu wife and acting, wearing garb and all of this. And even the people of those nations, of the nation, I think it was India that he went to, were surprised that he was dressed the way that he was, that he seemed to be dressed like he was in a Bollywood movie. And this was criticism from the very people he went to go see, who said that he wasn't even dressed appropriately for the nation that he went into, let alone to represent the country that he came from. Now, we understand his desire to dress up, and hence the reason he had Halloween pictures. At least I think those were of him. Who knows these days? It was on Twitter. I presume it was an actual picture of him and his wife dressed up in Halloween costumes. And I know he likes to play Mr. Dress Up, but at the end of the day, that's not what we need in Canada. We don't need politicians who are acting. We need politicians who actually care about our country, about the citizens that have worked hard here to build a strong and prosperous nation. A nation that, while it stays prosperous, has the ability to aid other nations and people that are in desperate situations around the world. But if our nation is depleted of all of its ability to thrive, we don't have the ability to help others. Now, I know very well that the United Nations has expressly stated that they want to demolish sovereign nations. And if you don't know that, you should do some research. Agenda 21, signed on by Brian Mulroney. Agenda 2030, signed on by Stephen Harper. And now the UN Compact, about to be signed on by Justin Trudeau. So is the answer to our problems voting out the current party and voting in another? No, it is not. That is an illusion. It is a distraction. These parties are two sides of the same coin. They're both centrist parties. They both believe in globalism, no matter what they say. If they didn't believe in it, they wouldn't be signing us up to UN agendas. Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 and the UN Global Compact for Migration. You wouldn't get that. One of them would be always completely against globalism and about ensuring that our nation stays strong and free from international tyrannical organizations that want to subvert our laws and our democratic way of life so that they can bring in a system to control us. They've already been amassing their own military. The UN wants to have a military force that supersedes national forces. So the UN can go in with its own unelected power and invoke police state wherever they want to go. This organization has watched, the United Nations has watched as terrible things have happened in various countries and took no action. And they have taken action against countries that are against their goals. They have also created policies to push terrible, terrible Soji-style education around the world. And whatever your view is on abortion, I don't happen to support it. To me, a child is a child no matter how small. Science has proven that a child is a child from conception. If you're going to go ahead and destroy a life inside the womb, it's no different than if you destroy a life outside the womb. You're talking about location, not personhood. A person doesn't suddenly become a person because they come out the birth canal. Think it through. But whatever your view is on abortion, the UN has decided for you that you must believe that abortion is good. You must also believe that the free movement of persons, the free movement of individuals, the free movement of human beings, whatever words you want to use, is a human right. They should not be prevented or restricted in any way, shape, or form from going from one area of the world to another. But it is up to the nation itself to decide whether or not that individual is of the type of individual that that nation deems will contribute positively to the future of the nation. That they will actually integrate well, that they will actually share values, and they will actually not be a drain on a system that needs to take care of its existing citizens. Now, you're going to take in some that are going to be needy, and a nation can take in some that are needy and be able to sustain that because they have a prosperous nation. But if you flood a nation with tons and tons of people that nation simply cannot support, and they're coming, and the vast majority of the evidence shows that the vast majority of the people who migrate into a new area will take up to 10 years to actually be viable and self-sustaining. We're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 85% of the people who come cannot immediately sustain themselves and can't sustain themselves for some time. So it isn't simply a matter of charity. It's also a matter of recognizing what a nation can withstand and what it cannot, what it can support and what it cannot. I'm a compassionate person. Over the years, I've helped many people in need, even to the detriment, sometimes self-sacrifice of myself, because of the fact that they were in need. I care about people. I want to see people helped, and I do help people. But we have to be reasonable, and we have to recognize what is the truth and speak the truth, even if people get all spazzy about it. If we want freedom in Canada to continue, we cannot kowtail to every individual who wants to yell at us, because it's uncomfortable for them to hear their nauseating noise in our face. And some of the worst people against Canada are the ones who think that they are social justice warriors. They think that they're speaking out for someone. But there's ways to do that. There's ways to have conversations. There's ways to have debate in a democratic society. It isn't by shutting down conversation. It isn't by shutting down meetings where people are sharing their deeply held convictions. It isn't by acting like kindergarten children who can't control themselves, and often kindergarten children behave themselves better. It isn't by pulling down national monuments and rioting. It isn't by harming people and car bombing and whatever other things you want to do. It is by having intellectual conversations, sitting down at the table with people you disagree with, and trying to reason with one another. But in order for that to happen, you have to be sitting with somebody who is reasonable. If you're not sitting with somebody reasonable, then you're not going to have a reasonable conversation. So here's the thing. Tomorrow, and I know this has been a lengthy conversation, but at the end of the day, there's some topics that we have to cover. I've scratched the surface of them. Canadian political accountability is a movement. It's a grassroots movement, nationwide, from shore to shore to shore, to ensure that our politicians that we elect keep their promises, that whatever they say when they're going on their election campaigns, that they actually do it. We need measures in government that give power back to us as citizens to be able to manage government, to have a recourse when government is not doing what they should be doing. If they, without reservation, continue to raise taxes, if they're not giving us proper representation, if they're not honoring what they said that they were going to do when they were elected, and they just said that stuff because you wanted to hear it, and then they went ahead and did what they wanted to anyway, those politicians need to be held accountable. And we need to have the conversation as a nation on how that looks. But one of the tools that we're going to be using is a website that we're building, nationwide website geared at tracking the promises of politicians and reporting on whether or not they are keeping those promises or breaking them. Citizens will be able to submit URLs on a given politician, and that politician will then be held to account. If those stories that are entered in are contrary to what the promises that politician made during the election process, then what's going to happen is that the citizens are going to know. Right now, many times, citizens don't know. They don't know whether a politician, they don't even remember what the politician promised, let alone whether or not they've kept the promise. Well, we need the tools, and our campaign is working on the tools, that will help each citizen to be involved on an ongoing basis, voluntarily, as you just contribute, make our nation more accountable. Let us make political accountability more than just an election buzzword. Join with us. Go to Facebook and go to Canadian Political Accountability. That's the name of the page. And very shortly, you can see there's a placeholder page at politicalaccountability.ca. If you feel like donating to this worthy initiative, that would help, because there are costs in taking the time to develop all of this stuff out for all of Canada to benefit. If you believe in what we're talking about, if you believe that Canada needs a stronger voice, when I say Canada, I'm not talking about the corporation called Canada. I'm not talking about the government called the Government of Canada. I'm talking about the people, we the people of Canada. If you believe in this free society that we've been able to benefit from, if you believe that we should be able to hold government accountable, then I ask you to stand with us. I ask you to get involved. I ask you to like our page and share our page. I ask that you would like our posts, any that you agree with, like them and share them. You can also go to the group that we've created that's connected to that page. If you just click on the groups section, and you can go to the group there, and you can add your own issues. You can submit your own ideas. Just link in different important articles that really are about political accountability. You know, if you see politicians that are not keeping their promises, keep it civil, but link in those articles, link in those news reports into that group. And very soon, there's going to be a website dedicated to that very thing. So I ask you to do that at least. Go to the page, like the page, share the page, watch our feed, share posts, get involved with this, and ideally, if you would be so kind to go to the politicalaccountability.ca website and go ahead and donate and help us make this a reality. It's been 8 years in the planning, and now it's coming through. Every day we see new people signing up to the page. Every day we see more movement, more interest in a nonpartisan approach that is not focused on party. It's focused on whether or not specific individuals in government are doing what they should in governing well or not. So let's not love parties. Let's not love the Conservative Party, the NDP, the Liberal Party, or whatever other party. Let's love our nation. Let's stand for our nation. So I want to thank you for the time you spent with me during this broadcast. I would ask that you also attend. There is a Yellow Vest event in Edmonton at 12 noon, and you can see the details for that in our events section. There's a card that you can click on. It will open it up on the phone. You can add it to your contacts, and you can share the card with other people. It's a quick way to get the word out. So look for that in the description for each of the events, for the Red Deer event and for the Edmonton event. And show up and be there as a voice. It's a peaceful protest. Be there. Don't get involved in any chaos. We don't want to have martial law put upon us because people have gone nuts. But go and stand. Have resolve for our country. Stand with one voice. It doesn't matter what your background is, and it doesn't matter what you traditionally voted for in the last election. It doesn't matter what you even think you'll vote for in the next election. It's time that we work together as a nation to stand on guard for this nation. So thank you for your time, and please feel free to comment, share this video with anyone who you think would like to hear about it. Thank you so much for your time.